Have you ever wished you could time travel for free tonight? Back to the decade when saucers hovered over diners and science turned into nightmares. The 1950s created sci-fi that feels like a radio scream in black and white. These 15 films are still roaming YouTube like ghosts. Dim the lights, grab a snack, let the countdown begin. Number 15, Teenagers from Outer Space, 1959. This is the kind of 1950s sci-fi that feels like it arrives on your screen the way a late-night broadcast signal used to arrive. Fuzzy, urgent, slightly haunted. A small crew lands on Earth with a mission that sounds like a cold corporate memo from another galaxy. They want to turn this planet into a breeding ground for gargons, giant lobster-like creatures that are equal parts ridiculous and weirdly unforgettable. Then one of them breaks the rule that always ruins an invasion. He starts caring. The heart of the film is its strange sincerity. The young alien called Thor is not a conqueror with a wicked laugh. He is a confused, lonely figure who sees something in a human girl that makes the whole plan feel wrong. The romance is innocent and awkward, and that is exactly why it works. It gives the movie a soft center inside all the cheap sets and stiff dialogue. The danger still creeps in. His commander is ruthless. The invasion timetable keeps ticking, and the film keeps building tension with very little money. That is the magic of these old pictures. They do not have spectacle. They have atmosphere. Watch it tonight, and you will feel the era in every frame. The fear of the unknown, the obsession with space, the belief that science might save us or erase us. It is cheesy. It is earnest. It is also surprisingly sad in the way it looks at a young man trapped between duty and a new world that feels warmer than his own. When the Gargon finally appears, it becomes the perfect symbol, a nightmare born from a plan that never understood life at all. Number 14, Plan 9 from Outer Space, 1959. Plan 9 is not just a movie, it is a legend that escaped its own budget and became immortal. You press play expecting a disaster, and you get something stranger, a dream that is stitched together with pure determination. Aliens arrive with a warning for humanity, not because they love us, because they fear what we might build. And when humans refuse to listen, the visitors choose a plan so desperate and so theatrical that it becomes iconic. They raise the dead. That is the hook. Graveyards, night fog, stiff police conversations, flying saucers that look like props because they are props, yet somehow the film keeps moving like it believes every second of itself. That belief is the secret ingredient. The cast plays it straight. The narrator speaks like he is revealing cosmic truth, and the whole thing feels like an outsider shouting into the void. In a decade full of polished studio product, this is the raw edge. The home-made nightmare. What makes Plan 9 perfect for a late-night YouTube watch is that it invites you to join the cult. You start laughing at the awkward moments. Then you start admiring the nerve. Then you notice the sadness underneath. This was made by people who wanted to create wonder and terror with almost nothing. The seams show. The sets wobble. The continuity breaks. But the mood keeps returning like a ghost. Cemetery stones, a police cruiser, the sky above the town that feels too quiet, too empty, too ready for something to descend. It is also a time capsule of Cold War paranoia, the fear that one button could end everything, the fear that nobody in charge will listen until it is too late. Plan 9 turns those fears into pulp. It does it clumsily. It does it loudly. It does it with a strange sincerity that makes the movie feel alive. If you watch it tonight, do not watch it like a critic. Watch it like you found a forbidden broadcast, a weird signal from 1959 still begging you to look up. Shoe number 13, Attack of the Giant Leeches, 1959. This film feels like the swamp itself is watching you, not the poetic swamp from adventure stories, the real swamp, sticky, dark, full of things you do not want to name. A small town sits near that water and people begin disappearing, not with explosions, not with laser beams, with silence. A walk into the reeds, a scream that stops too soon. Then the camera returns to the stillness. The creatures are giant leeches. That is the selling point, and it tells you everything about the era. The 1950s loved the idea that nature could rise up and punish human arrogance. Atomic testing, chemical waste, man poking the world with sharp sticks. Suddenly the world pokes back. The leeches in this movie are not sleek monsters. They are ugly and slow and almost pathetic, and that is what makes them creepy. They feel like something that should not exist, yet somehow does. The movie is lean and mean. It does not waste time. It drops you into a town where the adults are tired, the relationships are strained, and the landscape looks like it could swallow any secret. The leeches do not just kill. They take people to an underground lair like a nightmare version of a cave romance. The imagery is pure drive and horror, cheap in material yet effective in mood. You can sense the filmmakers squeezing every ounce of dread out of the fog and the water. Put it on tonight if you want a monster movie that feels grimy and close. It is not cosmic sci-fi, it is backyard sci-fi. The terror is right outside the window. The fear is that the environment around you is not neutral. It is alive. It is hungry. And the more you ignore it, the more it waits. In the end, Attack of the Giant Leeches leaves you with a simple, old-fashioned chill. You do not need a rocket ship to find horror. Sometimes it is already in the swamp behind your town. Number 12. The Amazing Colossal Man, 1957. This is one of those sci-fi stories that pretends to be about a monster but slowly reveals it is about tragedy. A military officer is exposed to radiation. He survives. That is the miracle. Then the second part begins. He grows, taller, larger, more separated from normal life with every passing day. The movie frames it like spectacle, a giant man on the run, military panic, crowds staring, but the emotional core is a human being losing his place in the world. The 1950s had a special obsession with size. Big bugs, big blobs, big fears. The Amazing Colossal Man turns that obsession inward. The real terror is not his height. It is what the transformation does to his mind. The film suggests that the body can change faster than the soul can adapt. One minute, he is a decorated officer. The next, he is a walking emergency that the government wants to contain. The loneliness hits hard. He cannot fit. He cannot hide. He cannot return to a normal room or a normal conversation. Even the people who care about him become distant because they do not know how to reach him anymore. That is why it works so well as a late-night watch. It is pulp with a bruise beneath it. The special effects are of their time and the sets are simple. But the pacing is strong and the idea stays unsettling. How quickly society turns fear into force. How quickly the military solution becomes the only solution. And how quickly the man himself starts to slip away from the person he used to be. If you want pure saucer fun, this is not that. This is a melancholy giant movie, a cautionary tale about radiation anxiety and identity loss. By the time the film reaches its final stretch, you might be surprised by what you feel. Not excitement, not laughter, something closer to pity. The monster is not evil. The monster is what is left when a human life is stretched past the point where it can survive. The number 11, Robot Monster, 1953. Robot Monster is the kind of movie that makes you blink and then laugh because your brain refuses to accept what it is seeing. A gorilla suit, a diving helmet, antennas, a robot called Ro-Man who speaks with solemn alien doom while standing in what looks like a rocky backyard. This should be unwatchable, and yet it is impossible to look away, because it feels like a fever dream from the earliest days of sci-fi cinema. The story is simple in the way a childhood nightmare is simple. Earth has been destroyed by an alien force. A small group of survivors remains. Ro-Man is sent to finish them off, but he begins to hesitate. He becomes fascinated with a human girl. That alone turns the movie into a strange cousin of teenagers from outer space, the invader with a conscience, the soldier who starts feeling something he was not designed to feel. The film also has an eerie tone beneath the absurd visuals. The survivors wander through empty landscapes. The dialogue repeats like a spell. The idea of total annihilation hangs over everything. It is like watching a play performed at the end of the world. There is even a strange moral tension. Roman wants to obey. Roman also wants connection. He is framed as both villain and victim, which is far more interesting than the costume deserves. Tonight on YouTube, Robot Monster is best enjoyed like a cult ritual. Turn off the part of your brain that wants realism. Let the movie be what it is. A low-budget artifact that accidentally becomes surreal art. It is the 1950s fear of invasion filtered through bargain bin materials, and it proves something important about this era. Sci-fi was not just polished studio craft, it was also pure imagination trying to escape from the cheapest costumes possible. Sometimes that escape fails, sometimes it becomes unforgettable. Number 10, The Giant Gila Monster, 1959. This film opens like a small-town memory and then suddenly turns into a creature feature nightmare that feels too close to home. The setting is not a distant planet or a secret lab hidden under a mountain. It is open roads, teenage hangouts, and quiet countryside where everyone thinks they know what dangers exist. Then the disappearances begin. A car wreck that makes no sense. A missing kid. A road that feels wrong at night. The threat is not a shadow in space. It is a living reptile growing bigger than nature ever intended and sliding through brush like a living rumor. What makes the Giant Gila Monster so watchable tonight is that it is built on a strong drive in rhythm. You get music, you get youth culture, you get the feeling of a community trying to keep normal life running while fear keeps spreading. The film leans hard into the idea of the young hero stepping up because the adults are overwhelmed. That is a classic 1950s pattern. Teenagers are framed as both the future and the only ones willing to act when the world gets weird. The monster itself is famously simple, a real lizard filmed on miniature sets. Yet it works more than you expect because the movie shoots the threat like a stalking presence rather than a full spectacle. There is also a subtext that fits the decade, the fear that something primitive will rise out of the land and punish complacency. The Gila monster becomes a symbol for nature warped by human interference, even when the film does not say it out loud. It is the anxiety that the world is changing in ways nobody controls. The final hunt is pure small-town survival. Trucks, guns, determination. A community forced to admit that the familiar landscape can turn hostile. When you watch it tonight, the charm is real. It is not sophisticated. It is earnest. It feels like an entire era trying to scream through a low-budget lens, and that is exactly why it sticks. Number 9. The Wasp Woman, 1959. This is not just a monster movie. It is a strange little tragedy about vanity, fear, and the cruel pressure to stay young forever. The story circles a powerful businesswoman running a cosmetics company. She is a boss with authority and an image to protect. But the industry she dominates is also the industry that devours her. Every wrinkle becomes a threat. Every sign of aging becomes a crisis. And then the promise arrives like a poison gift. A doctor offers an experimental treatment based on royal jelly harvested from wasps. It will restore youth. It will erase time. It will keep the brand alive. The horror creeps in slowly because it begins with something that feels familiar: desperation, the fear of becoming invisible, the fear of losing power in a world that only rewards beauty. The treatment works at first, and the film plays it like a miracle. Then the cost begins to show. Mood swings, strange cravings, a body that is no longer fully human. When the transformation hits, it is both ridiculous and weirdly unsettling because it is tied to something emotional. She is not just turning into a monster. She is turning into the nightmare behind the mirror. Watching it tonight on YouTube, you will notice how modern the theme feels. The obsession with youth, the market that sells fear as a product, the way people become experiments when they chase perfection. The Wasp Woman is small and campy, and it still hits a nerve. It also has a sharp, cruel tone toward the people around her. Employees gossip, men patronize. The board watches her like sharks. In the end, the real monster is not the costume. It is the world that pushed her into the experiment in the first place. That is why this film belongs on a late-night sci-fi list. It is pulpy. It is odd. It is also secretly bitter. Number 8. The Brain from Planet Arous, 1957. This is one of those movies that takes a simple idea and turns it into a full paranoia spiral. A brilliant scientist goes into the desert and comes back different. Not because he learned something, because something followed him home. An alien brain-like entity attaches itself to him and offers power beyond human limits. Suddenly, the man can control minds, bend metal, and dominate anyone in his orbit. The film stages it like a possession story disguised as science fiction. The invader does not need an army. It only needs one human body to ride like a vehicle. The fun of The Brain from Planet Arous is how quickly it escalates. The scientist becomes cruel. He becomes smug. He starts talking like a dictator because he feels like a god. His relationships collapse because the people who love him can tell he is no longer fully present. The film uses that emotional dread to keep you locked in. This is not just a ray gun story. It is about a person being hollowed out by power. The more he gains, the less human he becomes. That is the real horror. There is also a classic Cold War flavor in the idea of infiltration. An enemy inside a trusted figure. A threat that wears a familiar face. The movie makes you feel the fear of living next to someone who has been replaced by something else. And the best part is that it keeps it simple. It does not drown you in explanations. It just shows a man turning into a weapon and the people around him scrambling to stop it. Tonight on YouTube, it plays like a fast, tense thriller with a sci-fi skin. It has one of the most memorable concepts of the decade. A villain that is literally a brain. A story that asks what happens when intelligence loses empathy and becomes pure domination. The answer is ugly, and it makes this film feel sharper than its budget suggests. Number 7. The Unearthly, 1957. The Unearthly feels like the shadow side of medical ambition. It opens in a world where science is supposed to be progress and doctors are supposed to be saviors. Then it introduces a man who treats patients like raw material, a surgeon obsessed with youth and perfection. A clinic that looks respectable on the outside and feels wrong the moment you step inside. People arrive hoping for help and end up trapped in experiments that twist the meaning of healing into something cold. This is sci-fi that leans into mad doctor horror. It is not about aliens landing on lawns. It is about arrogance wearing a white coat. The film builds dread by keeping everything almost normal. Hallways, consultations, a calm voice explaining procedures. Then you notice the missing patients, the whispers, the locked doors, the way assistants flinch, the way the doctor speaks about humanity like it is a problem to solve. That is when the uneasiness becomes a grip. The reason it works late at night is because the fear is intimate. This is the nightmare of trusting authority and being betrayed. The nightmare of waking up in a place where your body is no longer yours. The film taps into a deep anxiety that the 1950s carried under its clean surface. The fear that modern science could become ruthless and treat people like numbers. It is a cautionary tale wrapped in B-movie clothes. The Unearthly also has that classic low-budget intensity where the dialogue is theatrical and the pacing keeps pushing forward. It does not have to be perfect. It only has to keep you uneasy. By the time it reaches its final stretch, you realize the title is not just about monsters. It is about behavior, about a man who has become so detached from empathy that he is no longer human in any meaningful way. That is the kind of horror that does not age. Number 6. The Killer Shrews, 1959. If you want a movie that feels like a storm trapped in a bottle, this is the one. The Killer Shrews begins with a boat arriving at an isolated island where something is wrong. The wind feels hostile. The house feels like a fortress. The people living there are tense, like they have been listening for footsteps in the dark. Then you learn the truth. The island is crawling with mutated shrews turned into predators, fast, vicious, and relentless. They do not stalk slowly like classic monsters. They swarm. The film creates dread with simple tools: isolation, darkness, the sound of scratching at doors, the sight of barricades that do not feel strong enough. It becomes a siege story where survival depends on staying inside while the night tries to break in. The shrews themselves are famously created with dogs in costumes, which sounds silly, and yet on screen they move with enough speed and aggression to sell the threat. It becomes that perfect drive in magic where you know it is fake, but your nerves still react. There is also a strange human tension running through it. Personal conflicts and jealousy simmer while death prowls outside. That mix of monster fear and relationship drama is pure 1950s. People trapped together under pressure and revealing who they really are. The island setting makes everything feel more claustrophobic. There is nowhere to run. The water surrounding them is not freedom. It is a border. Tonight on YouTube, this film plays like a midnight campfire story. You will feel the comfort of the safe room and the fear of what waits beyond the door. It is simple, it is effective, and it delivers one of the best survival atmospheres in low-budget sci-fi horror. When the shrews attack, it is not just action. It is the feeling of being hunted by something small enough to slip through cracks and angry enough to never stop. Number 5. The Crawling Eye, 1958. This is the kind of film that begins with cold air and quiet dread. A remote mountain village sits under a sky that feels too heavy. People go missing. Lights flicker. Radios fail. The locals whisper about something moving in the mist. Then the truth rises out of the fog like a nightmare that refuses to stay hidden. A huge, single-eyed alien creature with writhing tentacles stalking the mountainside. It sounds simple. It also hits a primal fear, the fear of being watched by something you cannot understand. What makes The Crawling Eye perfect for a late-night YouTube watch is its atmosphere. The mountain setting gives the film natural suspense. You get narrow roads, steep cliffs, storm clouds that swallow the landscape. The characters feel trapped between weather and terror. The film also plays like a mystery first. Investigators arrive. Questions pile up. The audience keeps waiting for the reveal. And when it finally happens, the monster is not sleek or futuristic. It is grotesque. It looks like it crawled out of an old nightmare book. That ugliness is part of the charm. It feels tactile, like something real could be hiding behind a boulder. The story also taps into a deeper 1950s anxiety. The idea that danger can drift in on the wind, invisible at first, then suddenly undeniable. The villagers dismiss the warning signs until the body count forces them to accept the impossible. That pattern is pure Cold War fear turned into entertainment. The threat does not announce itself with speeches. It just takes people and leaves questions behind. The film keeps you hooked because each new scene adds pressure. The mist becomes a character. The mountains become a prison. By the time the creature is fully revealed, the movie becomes a survival tale. People rally, men with guns, flashlights cutting through darkness. A final attempt to destroy what should not exist. It is old school. It is earnest. It has that gritty, pulpy bite that modern films often polish away. If you want a creature feature that feels like a ghost story told on a frozen night, this one delivers. Number 4. The Phantom from 10,000 Leagues, 1955. This one feels like a seaside nightmare washed up from deep water. A coastal town is hit by strange murders. The victims are left with marks that do not fit any normal explanation. Rumors spread fast because the ocean always makes people believe in monsters. Fishermen whisper about something moving under the waves, a creature that rises out of fog like a curse. Then the film reveals its strange secret. The monster is real, and it is tied to science that went too far. The Phantom from 10,000 Leagues has a mood that makes it easy to watch late at night. It is not fast. It is not loud. It is eerie. It plays with shadows and shoreline silence. The sea becomes a dark mirror. The town feels exposed. The creature itself looks like something created by desperation, a man-sized amphibious horror that feels half human and half mistake. That is the soul of the film. The monster is not just an invader, it is a consequence. There is a classic 1950s theme here. The idea that the real danger is not outer space. It is what humans do in hidden rooms, science without conscience, experiments without limits. The film uses the creature as a symbol of that fear, a living proof that nature and humanity can be twisted into something neither can control. The mystery angle keeps you invested. Characters investigate. Suspects emerge. Fear spreads. People try to explain the killings as accidents until the evidence becomes too horrific to deny. What really works is the way the film mixes crime thriller tension with sea monster dread. You get a hunt. You get suspicion. You get that feeling that the coastline is no longer safe. It turns beaches into danger zones. That shift is powerful because it attacks a place people associate with calm. If you watch it tonight, it will feel like a forgotten pulp classic, rough at the edges, strange in its choices, unforgettable in the way it makes the ocean feel like a door that should never open. Number 3. The Brain Eaters, 1958. This movie starts with one of the creepiest simple images in the decade. A strange object sits in a small town. It looks like a pod, like a seed, like something that does not belong on Earth. People gather around it the way humans always gather around the unknown. Curious, careless. Then the invasion begins without spaceships and without lasers. Parasitic creatures start attaching to human bodies. They crawl onto necks. They grip like living shackles, and the people they control stop acting like themselves. The Brain Eaters is pure invasion paranoia. It takes the fear of mind control and makes it visible. That is what makes it so effective. You can see the loss of freedom. You can see the monster clinging to a person like a stamp of ownership. The film turns ordinary streets into horror zones because anyone could be taken over. A neighbor, a friend, a police officer. The town becomes a trap where trust collapses in real time. There is also a grim sense of inevitability. Once the parasites spread, the logic becomes brutal. Either you stop it early or you lose everything. The characters scramble to understand what they are facing, but every delay makes the enemy stronger. That creates momentum. It is not just scary, it is urgent. The film carries that old pulp energy where people argue, panic rises, and then survival takes over. Watching it tonight, you will notice how this story fits perfectly into the 1950s mood. Fear of infiltration, fear of unseen enemies, fear that the person next to you might not be themselves anymore. It is the same anxiety that fuels many classics, but The Brain Eaters gives it a nasty little twist. The enemy is physical. It touches you. It brands you. It turns the body into a battlefield. The special effects are simple. The idea is strong enough to do the work. The parasites are disgusting in a way that still lands. And when the town fights back, the film feels like a desperate last stand. If you want a weird invasion film that feels like a nightmare about losing control of your own life, this is a perfect midnight pick. Number 2. The Beast with a Million Eyes, 1955. This film feels like a warning whispered through the desert wind. A lonely ranch, wide open land, empty sky, the kind of place where you think you can see danger coming. Then the animals start acting wrong. Dogs turn vicious. Livestock panics. A strange tension spreads through the family living there. Something unseen is watching, not with one set of eyes, with a million. The title is exaggerated. The dread is not. The beast with a million eyes is built on an idea that still unsettles. An alien intelligence does not need to land in front of you. It can manipulate what is already here. It can use animals as tools. It can turn nature into a surveillance network. That makes the threat feel unavoidable. You cannot run because the world around you becomes its sensor. Every movement can be noticed. Every weakness can be targeted. The movie keeps things intimate. It stays close to the ranch family and the people nearby. That small scale makes the fear feel personal. You are not watching armies. You are watching a home being invaded by influence. The way animals turn against the humans is genuinely creepy because it breaks a bond that feels natural. Pets become threats. Familiar sounds at night become warning signals. The desert becomes a stage for paranoia. The film also has that pure 1950s tension between reason and belief. Characters try to explain events logically, but logic keeps failing. The pattern grows too strange. The fear becomes too direct. That is when the film leans into its core concept. The alien is not just a monster. It is a presence, a force that wants control, that wants to observe, that wants to bend life into obedience. If you watch it tonight, do not expect slick action. Expect mood. Expect unease. Expect that slow, tightening feeling that comes from being watched when you are supposed to be alone. It is a strange little film with a big, haunting idea. Sometimes the scariest invader is the one you never fully see. Number 1. Invasion of the Saucer Men, 1957. This is the movie you put on when you want 1950s sci-fi with a wicked grin. It starts with teenagers out at night. A parked car, small-town roads, then a flying saucer drops into their world like a prank from outer space. The aliens that emerge are not towering conquerors. They are weird little creatures with bulging heads and creepy eyes. They look ridiculous and unsettling at the same time, and then the town starts falling apart because nobody believes the kids. That is the joy of Invasion of the Saucer Men. It is horror comedy before the term feels common. It uses the classic teen perspective. The young see the truth. The adults dismiss it. Authority becomes the obstacle. That creates a fun, chaotic rhythm as the teenagers scramble to prove they are not crazy. Meanwhile, the aliens cause trouble in a way that feels both silly and sinister. They leave victims with strange wounds. They move through the night like walking punchlines with sharp teeth. The film also captures the decade's obsession with youth culture colliding with Cold War fear. Teenagers want freedom. They want romance. They want the night to belong to them. Then the sky literally invades. The contrast is part of the comedy. You go from flirting to survival. You go from soda shop normal life to cosmic panic. And because the film does not take itself too seriously, it becomes a perfect late-night watch. There is still tension underneath the laughs. The idea that an alien threat could land in the most ordinary place. The idea that bureaucracy would waste time while danger spreads. The movie makes that point with humor, but it still lands. By the end, it feels like a small-town nightmare that refuses to behave. A weird saucer story that keeps moving fast and never lets the mood settle. If you want your final pick to be fun but still rooted in that classic era dread, this is the right number 1. It is light. It is strange. It is exactly the kind of film you discover on YouTube and wonder how you lived without it. That is 15 free trips into the 1950s future, where fog hides monsters and deserts hide watchers and teenagers spot saucers first. If you want more free watch tonight lists, say the decade and the genre. And if you enjoyed this countdown, like, subscribe, and tell me which film you are pressing play on.